Ever wonder what it takes to haul 3,600 tons of freight up a mountain grade without breaking a sweat? Picture locomotives so massive they weighed over 1,000,000 pounds and stretched longer than a basketball court. These American iron giants didn't just move freight, they moved mountains of it, reshaping the nation's economy one thunderous chuff at a time. 10. Texas and Pacific 11 class. Back in 1925, the Texas and Pacific Railway needed something bigger, something meaner than their existing fleet. Enter the I-1 class, the very first locomotives to wear the 210 four-wheel arrangement, a configuration that earned the name Texas type in their honor. Built by Lima Locomotive Works, these brutes packed 83,000 pounds of tractive effort with their 63-inch drivers and 29 by 32-inch cylinders. What made these engines special wasn't just their size weighing in at nearly 450,000 pounds, but their revolutionary design. They introduced Lima's superpower concept to heavy freight service, featuring a massive four-wheel trailing truck that supported an enormous firebox. This meant they could generate steam faster and maintain higher speeds while pulling tremendous loads across the roller coaster grades of West Texas. The TNP eventually rostered 70 of these workhorses between 1925 and 1929, and they proved so successful that the railroad literally gave its name to an entire class of locomotives. These engines could haul 40% more tonnage than the 210-2s they replaced, while actually burning less fuel, a combination that made railroad executives smile and competitors take notice. During World War II, they handled everything from oil shipments to military supplies across Texas. Though most met the scrapper's torch by the 1950s, locomotive number 610 survived and even returned to service briefly in the 1970s, pulling excursion trains and reminding folks just how mighty these Texas powerhouses really were. 9. Great Northern R2 class. The Great Northern Railway didn't mess around when they built the R2 class at their Hilliard shops between 1927 and 1930. These behemoths held the distinction of being the largest locomotives ever constructed west of the Mississippi River, at the time a badge of honor that meant something when you're talking about engines exceeding 500,000 pounds. With a boiler that stretched the imagination and Type E superheater surface area that set new standards, the R2s were engineered to conquer the brutal grades of the Northern Rockies. Their Belpaire fireboxes featured combustion chambers that contributed 178 square feet to direct heating surface, while arch tubes added another 78 square feet. Running on oil rather than coal, these machines could generate massive amounts of steam quickly and efficiently. What really set the R2s apart was their assignment territory from Minot, North Dakota, through all of Montana to Spokane, Washington. Picture this when temperatures dropped around Thanksgiving and snow started flying across those barren rolling hills. The oil would stiffen in car journals, and these huge articulateds would literally bellow and snort as they forced frozen tonnage into motion. A single R2 could handle 50 cars on a warm October day without even fluctuating its boiler pressure. The Great Northern's mechanical team didn't just build big, they built smart. These locomotives reflected James J. Hill's legacy of constantly searching for bigger and better motive power. The R2s were simple, articulated locomotives, many working with oil-fired Vanderbilt tenders. The R2s proved that home-built locomotives could rival anything the major manufacturers produced. They served faithfully hauling tonnage across the northern tier until diesel technology finally caught up with them in the 1950s. Before we move on to the next one in the list, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you're enjoying this content so far, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch these videos without subscribing. Imagine what we could accomplish if everyone subscribed. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thanks to all of you who do. 8. Santa Fe 2900 class. When Baldwin delivered the Santa Fe 2900 class in 1943 and 1944, they weren't just building locomotives, they were creating the heaviest 484 Northerns ever constructed. Thanks to wartime shortages of lightweight materials, these engines had to be built with ordinary metals, resulting in locomotives that outweighed their nearest rivals by over 2,000 pounds. But what could have been a disadvantage became a defining characteristic of their incredible power. 30 of these Black Beauties rolled out, numbered 2900 through 2929, each one demonstrating American industrial might during World War II. With 80-inch drivers, Timken roller bearings on all axles, and the ability to generate around 5,000 horsepower, these engines could reach 100 miles per hour in regular service. After the war, when fitted with special roller bearing tandem side rods between 1946 and 1948, they were approved for 110 miles per hour operation with the Santa Fe's premier passenger trains like the Super Chief. The 2900s didn't just haul freight, they became essential to the Santa Fe's passenger operations between Kansas City and Los Angeles. A single 2900 could pull 26 all-steel passenger cars on level track and still handle 15 cars up a 2% grade. During the war years, they moved countless troop trains, transporting America's fighting forces across the continent with speed and reliability that helped secure victory. These locomotives represented the absolute peak of steam passenger power on the Santa Fe. Each one cost over $250,000 in 1944 dollars, equivalent to several million today. Though their careers were cut short by the diesel transition in the 1950s, 6 of these magnificent machines survive today, including number 2926 in Albuquerque, which was restored to operating condition in 2021 and stands as the largest operating 484 in America. 7 Norfolk and Western Class A, built entirely in N&W's own Roanoke shops. Between 1936 and 1950, the Class A represented everything the railroad knew about building powerful, efficient locomotives. These weren't bought from Baldwin or Lima, these were homegrown Virginia products, 43 of them in total, and they proved that the N&W could out-engineer anybody when it came to steam power. With cast steel frames and Timken roller bearings on nearly every surface, the Class A could generate over 5,000 drawbar horsepower at 45 miles per hour and reach speeds of 70 miles per hour while pulling heavy coal trains. During testing, officials watched in amazement as these engines pulled 4,800 tons at 25 miles per hour on a 0.5% grade and 7,500 tons at 64 miles per hour on level track. The last 5 locomotives even featured McGill multi-roll roller bearings in the side and main rods, making them the only articulated locomotives ever to have such advanced friction reduction technology. Here's what really impressed the brass. In 1952, the N&W tested a Class A against a 4-unit EMD F7 diesel set. The test was declared a tie on fuel costs and performance. The steam locomotive matched modern diesel technology stride for stride. These engines routinely pulled 150-car coal drags at average speeds of 70 miles per hour, and during the Second World War, they moved military troops and equipment across the eastern mountain regions with remarkable efficiency. The Class A locomotives were among the last mainline steam locomotives put into service in America, with the final examples built in 1950. On July 11, 1959, Class A, number 1240, handled part of N&W's Farewell to Steam. Excursion with Y6B, number 2174, sharing the run. The event marked the end of N&W mainline steam. Today, only number 1218 survives, preserved at the Virginia Museum of Transportation as the sole surviving 2664 locomotive in the world, a fitting monument to the N&W's engineering excellence. 6. Southern Pacific Cab Forward AC-12 class. Talk about thinking outside the box, or in this case, turning it completely around. The Southern Pacific's AC-12 class cab forwards were essentially Yellowstone locomotives running backward with the cab and firebox at the front instead of the rear. Built by Baldwin in 1944, these were the last and most powerful of SP's legendary cab forward fleet. Why run a locomotive backward? Simple survival. The SP's routes through the Sierra Nevada mountains included 38 miles of snow sheds and tunnels over Donner Pass. In conventional locomotives, crews were literally suffocating from smoke and fumes in these confined spaces. The cab-forward design put the crew ahead of the smoke, while oil fuel piped from the tender to the front-mounted firebox made the whole arrangement possible. These mechanical marvels, with their 4882 wheel arrangement, could generate tremendous power while keeping their crews alive and alert. The AC-12s represented the culmination of SP's cab-forward development, which began in 1908 and eventually produced 256 of these unique locomotives. They became the absolute trademark of the Southern Pacific, instantly recognizable and perfectly adapted to their mountain territory. The engineering was remarkable. The power reverse lever and throttle motion were reversed, the drive wheel axles were reversed end for end, and the smoke box coupling was strengthened to handle the pushing forces. Despite initial concerns about collision safety with the crew at the very front, these locomotives proved remarkably safe throughout roughly 15 years of service. Today, number 4,294, the last cab forward ever built, resides at the California State Railroad Museum, preserved as a National Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark and the sole surviving example of this ingenious American innovation. 5. Union Pacific Challenger Class. Before there was Big Boy, there was Challenger. Starting in 1936, Union Pacific revolutionized articulated locomotive design with these 4 664 machines, eventually rostering 105 of them, more than any other railroad. At nearly 122 feet long and weighing just over 1 million pounds with tender, the Challengers proved that articulated locomotives didn't have to be slow. Built to conquer the Wasatch Mountains at speed, these locomotives could hit 70 miles per hour while hauling massive freight consists. The engineering breakthrough that made this possible was 280 psi boiler pressure, something usually reserved for passenger engines, combined with 69-inch drivers and advanced articulation that allowed the boiler to swing independently through curves. A Challenger charging upgrade at full throttle was pure poetry in motion, all that mass working in perfect mechanical harmony. The Challengers earned their name honestly. During a 1936 meeting, when told that running unassisted from Ogden to Wasatch would be a challenge for any locomotive, UP executive William Jeffers responded, "Let's call them Challengers." The name stuck, and these engines lived up to it, handling everything from 3,600-ton freight trains to passenger consists through mountain territory. What made the Challengers special was their versatility. Unlike most articulateds relegated to slow drag freight, these could handle fast freight, passenger trains, and everything in between. During the global conflict of the 1940s, they were essential to UP's transportation effort, moving troops and materials across the western states. Challenger number 3,985 continued this legacy into the modern era, operating in excursion service from 1981 to 2010, proving that even after 75 years, these magnificent machines could still answer the challenge. 4. Duluth Mesabi and Iron Range M3 and M4, Yellowstone Class. When the DM and IR needed locomotives to haul iron ore, the heaviest regular freight commodity in America, they didn't fool around. The Yellowstone Class M3 and M4 locomotives, built by Baldwin in 1941 and 1943, were the most powerful two 884s ever constructed, producing an incredible 140,000 pounds of tractive effort. These weren't just big locomotives, they were purpose-built ore hauling machines. Operating on less than 600 miles of track in Minnesota, the DM and IR had one job: move iron ore from inland mines to the Lake Superior docks at Duluth and two harbors. The Yellowstones were perfectly designed for this task, capable of hauling trains exceeding 100 cars loaded with ore. Some reports mention trains as long as 180 cars. The real test came on the 2.2% grade from Duluth up to the yards at Proctor. Empty ore cars going upgrade could theoretically empty a tender's entire supply of 25,000 gallons of water and 26 tons of coal on a single climb. These locomotives featured gray boiler jacketing and distinctive centipede tenders supported by 4 axle trucks. Roller bearings on all axles reduced maintenance to levels comparable to diesel locomotives. During the war years, when ore traffic was critical to victory, the Yellowstones proved so capable that the Denver and Rio Grande Western leased several for helper service over Tennessee Pass. The DNRGW sent a telegram to the DM and IR stating these were the finest steam locomotives ever to operate on their railroad. The 18 Yellowstones served faithfully into the early 1960s, with most seeing over 20 years of hard service. Today, 3 survive in Minnesota museums, number 225 at Proctor, no. 227 at the Lake Superior Railroad Museum in Duluth, and number 229 at Two Harbors. These preserved examples stand as monuments to the age when Minnesota iron ore, carried by the mighty Yellowstones, helped forge America's industrial strength. 3. Pennsylvania Railroad Q2 class. The Pennsylvania Railroad's Q2 class wasn't just powerful, it was the most powerful steam locomotive ever subjected to stationary testing, producing a recorded 7,987 cylinder horsepower at the PRR's test plant. Built at the railroad's Altoona Works between 1944 and 1945, these duplex drive powerhouses represented the absolute zenith of rigid frame steam locomotive technology. With their distinctive 4-4-6-4 wheel arrangement, essentially two locomotives under one boiler, the Q2s were unlike anything else on American rails. The forward pair of driving wheels was powered by 19 3/4-inch cylinders, while the rear set got 23 3/4-inch cylinders, creating a perfectly balanced distribution of power. At 115,800 pounds of tractive effort and nearly 8,000 horsepower, they were 78% more powerful than other PRR freight locomotives in service. These weren't experimental curiosities. 26 Q2s were built, including prototype number 6,131, and they could pull 125 freight cars at 50 miles per hour. The duplex design's tendency to slip was countered by an automatic slip control mechanism that reduced power to the slipping unit, making them surprisingly sure-footed despite their immense power. During testing, Q2 number 6,199 reached peak output at 57.4 miles per hour while evaporating 16,600 gallons of water per hour and burning 12.5 tons of coal. Designer Raymond Loewy gave these mechanical marvels an Art Deco styling that made them look as fast as they were powerful. But despite their capabilities, the Q2s had short careers. They were more expensive to maintain than conventional locomotives and were obvious targets when the transition to diesel power began. All were retired by 1951, leaving behind a legacy as perhaps the ultimate expression of steam power, the most powerful locomotives that never needed to articulate to achieve their incredible performance. 2. Chesapeake and Ohio H8 Allegheny class. Lima Locomotive Works outdid themselves when they built the C&O's H8 Allegheny class between 1941 and 1948. These 60 locomotives weren't just big, they were engineering masterpieces that generated more proven horsepower than any other steam locomotive, with dynamometer car tests recording up to 7,498 horsepower. That's more power than the famous big boys packed into a locomotive that many consider the true king of steam. Weighing in at 771,300 pounds, some sources claim up to 778,000 pounds, with tenders that stretched the total weight past 1.2 million pounds, the Alleghenies were built to conquer their namesake mountains. The six-wheel trailing truck, unique among American steam locomotives, supported a firebox 180 inches long with a 118-inch combustion chamber. This massive furnace could consume 7-8 tons of coal per hour when running at peak output, while the automatic stoker fed the fire at rates up to 12.5 tons per hour. Here's what separated the Alleghenies from other powerhouses' sheer pulling ability. With two sets of 22.5-inch by 33-inch cylinders driving 67-inch wheels, they generated 110,200 pounds of starting tractive effort, which could reach 119,500 pounds with worn drivers. During the 1940s, they proved invaluable hauling coal from West Virginia mines to Hampton Roads, with one Allegheny at the front and another pushing, moving 11,500-ton trains at full throttle from White Sulphur Springs to the summit at Allegheny, Virginia. The Alleghenies embodied perfection in steam technology, yet their reign was tragically brief. Most were barely 10 years old when retirement began in 1952. Today, only two survive number 1601 at the Henry Ford Museum, so well preserved it still occasionally leaks oil, and number 1604 at the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum. These preserved specimens remind us that sometimes biggest really does mean best. 1. Union Pacific Big Boy Class. Here it is, folks, the undisputed heavyweight champion of American steam. The Union Pacific Big Boy. All 25 of them, built by Alco between 1941 and 1944, represents the absolute apex of steam locomotive development. At 132 feet long and weighing 1.2 million pounds with tender, these weren't just locomotives, they were moving mountains of steel that redefined what was possible. The name itself happened by accident. During construction of the first unit, an Alco machinist chalked Big Boy on the smoke box. Union Pacific had planned to call them Wasatch after the mountains they'd conquer, but Big Boy stuck. And honestly, what else could you call a locomotive with a 4884 wheel arrangement that had never been used before or since? With 68-inch drivers, a boiler pressure of 300 psi, and 4 cylinders each, 23.5 by 32 inches, Big Boys generated 135,000 pounds of starting tractive effort. Built specifically to eliminate double heading on the Wasatch grade, a single Big Boy could haul 3,600 tons unassisted up the 1.14% grade that had previously required 2 locomotives. During the Second World War, they became legendary for their reliability and power, with some pulling trains of up to 4,200 tons. Their 14-wheel tenders carried 25,000 gallons of water and 28 tons of coal, later increased to 32 tons, enough to feed that massive firebox with its 150 square feet of great area. The Big Boys' finest hour came during the war when they moved unprecedented amounts of freight for victory. Between 1941 and 1959, they accumulated millions of miles of service, with individual locomotives like number 4014 logging over 1,031,205 miles. 8 Big Boys survive today, displayed at museums across America. Union Pacific number 4014 was restored to operating condition in 2019 for the 150th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad. Today, it's the world's largest operating steam locomotive, still showing crowds across America what real power looks like. When 4014 Thunders passed at speed, pulling modern excursion trains, it's not just a locomotive, it's a rolling piece of American history, proving that sometimes the biggest dreams really do come true. From the innovative cab forwards conquering the Sierras to the mighty Big Boys dominating the Wasatch Mountains, these iron giants didn't just move freight, they moved America forward. Each rivet, each weld, each precisely machined part represented the summit of American engineering know-how. These locomotives hauled the coal that powered our industries, the ore that built our cities, and the goods that fed a growing nation. They won wars, built economies, and captured imaginations. Today, as preserved examples like Big Boy 4014 thunder across the landscape, they remind us of an era when American railroaders didn't ask if something was possible, they just built it bigger, stronger, and faster than anyone thought feasible. If you enjoyed this journey through American railroad history, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We've got plenty more stories from the golden age of railroading coming your way. Until next time, keep listening for that lonesome whistle. And remember, they don't build them like they used to.